For our next guy because, well, we don't need a lot of energy because this guy's going to bring the roof down. And we've got James Moore, Chief Revenue Officer from Simplify with us today to kick things off on day 2. Hope you had a fabulous night last night. Thanks to MIQ for making dinner and cocktails happen and the boat rides and all that. I think it was a great evening. And for those of you who came back to the Sandy's Pub last night, you got to see the bridal shit show, as they say, and that was a lot of fun too. So all that being said, I think a pretty successful evening, and again, thanks for taking part in all that. James is again, as I mentioned, the CRO of Simplify. Simplify has been sponsoring and supporting a lot of our events as of late, and also is a big supporter of our publications and all that good stuff. So we're thrilled to have James kicking off day 2. Give him your attention. It's addressable audiences at scale and some other cool stuff. James, take it away.
Okay, testing. Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, good morning. Welcome to another beautiful day in Lake Tahoe. I'm sure I'm not alone when I tell you that despite this great conference, I can't wait to get outside again. This place is beautiful. By way of introduction, again, my name is James Moore. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Simplify. I've led the sales team here since 2010, so it's been about almost 9 years that I've been leading the sales organization. Prior to that, I built a site retargeting company called Fetchback that we sold to eBay, became eBay Enterprise. And I partnered up with a guy named Frost Prelo and Paul Harrison, who built a technology company that was acquired by Collective. And we all came together and decided we're going to build the world's 200th DSP, which is great. Anyway, the company's headquartered in Fort Worth, Texas, but I collect my mail in Phoenix, Arizona. It's 114 degrees today in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm super excited to be in Tahoe. So I'm going to be talking about specifically, there's a million things we could talk about, but I'm actually going to show you a static live demo in our UI of our new addressable audience curation capabilities. We just want to show it to you. It's one of the fastest growing product releases that we've deployed in our UI. But before I do that, I want to introduce you to the company and maybe reintroduce you to the company. So we're a demand-side platform. It's not cool to call yourself a demand-side platform anymore. You have to call yourself a marketing operating system or whatever else drives up valuations. But that's what we are. We're in the data-driven advertising business. And we'd like to think that we're probably one of the fastest growing, most successful companies that's probably not in your stack that you didn't really know about. This month, there's more than 130,000 campaigns that are live on the platform right now in support of about 32,000 advertisers. We've got about 450 agency partners, and if you go to our website or happen to read that lovely flyer that's in front of you, it basically says that we're in the local programmatic or localized programmatic business. Basically, it's this. We built a system to ingest, bid, report, and optimize on unstructured data, behavioral data, and mobile GPS data to try to provide performance faster on fewer impressions. And it turns out anybody who's doing highly localized campaigns, we all know the challenges with data segment fidelity, but segments don't play nice with low spend. So we've had to build basically a unique workflow and a unique technology to drive performance for people who have lots of small campaigns. So half of my business is 50% of the top 10 TV, cable, radio, newspaper companies who have hundreds of salespeople who are selling every small business in your community, mobile geofencing, behavioral targeting, CTV. They sit on top of our API. So I have 30 clients with more than 2,000 live campaigns, and there's probably 15,000 reps out selling programmatic solutions that activate on our platform. The other half of my business is we work directly with large brands and agencies. Some of my largest clients are companies like Subway, Quick Trip, Jack in the Box, Edward Jones, Allstate. These are organizations that have hundreds or thousands of very small campaigns that you have to be able to manage from a workflow with high performance goals. And we built some unique workflow to do that. So that's who we are. So there's this like tsunami of events taking place in the industry. We've talked about a lot of them here in this conference. It's been incredibly educational for me. I wanted to touch on 3 or 4, mostly because what I want to show you takes 5 minutes and I need to fill 20. But having said that, these are some of the variables that are out there that we have to take into consideration as we continue to innovate and try to future-proof audience targeting solutions. I want to touch on them one by one. Clearly, everybody in this room knows that there's this device proliferation taking place. Anybody here remember the world before the internet? Right? The last commercial restriction was removed off the internet in 1995. Google founded in 98. I remember a world before the internet. If you were in advertising, it was real simple. You knew what shows people watched. You knew which networks they aired on. You knew which time they were going to be tuning in. You knew which radio stations they listened to, which local newspaper they read, and which one of 3 to 5 networks they were tuning in to get their nightly news. Advertising was pretty simple. But the internet fractured the distribution channel. People started consuming content wherever they want. And then, of course, mobile. How many years we stood at these conferences and they said it's going to be the year of mobile, and then one day it just became the year of mobile, right? 4G came out, I think, in 2010 or 11, and then from 13 to 18, now 90%, probably 100% in this demographic, everybody in here has got a smartphone. The sale of smartphones is growing 7 times faster than the rate of population in this country, while desktop and laptop sales are relatively flat. And now, of course, we've got the television set. Every television set that's coming out today is web connected, or got a web connected device plugged into it. And with IPv6, if you sit from where we sit on the technology side, television sets are starting to look eerily like giant mobile devices hanging on a wall. And so as we work toward IFA identification, now we've got to deal with this kind of one-to-many medium that we can tap into and link up with these kind of one-to-one type distribution mediums. And that's something we have to take into consideration. I don't need to preach to this group about the migration of eyeballs going from linear. I don't think I have to preach to that group. Deloitte, in March of this year, released a stat that said 69% of U.S. households are tapping into one or more subscription for video on demand or streaming services, most of which are ad-supported, some of which are not, right? If it's a millennial household, it's a staggering 88%, and those same households, only 51% have a cable subscription. And it was 1 year ago, in Q3 of 2018, when the cable companies announced that for the first time in the history of their company, more than 1,000 subscribers canceled their contracts. And it's only accelerated since then. So finally, the migration of eyeballs, cord cutting, cord stacking is starting to reach kind of a critical mass, and that's something that we have to take into consideration with web-connected audience targeting. And then there's this whole privacy thing. Gosh, everybody in here has been talking about it. Canada, California, GDPR, all the things, the political climate, everything that's going to follow. We have to keep attuned to that and make sure that we're constantly working to stay in compliance. The conclusions we've come to are basically this. People are generally okay with you using non-PII data, provided they know where that data is coming from and they have some reasonable controls to control who gets access to it and when to turn it off. What we think is really interesting is that there's so many companies in our industry, such as the telecom companies, the cable companies, of course Facebook, organizations who have massive amounts of personally identifiable data, and they're having a hard time plausibly convincing the consumer population that they're able to keep the PII and non-PII separate, and it's creating a climate that we have to constantly work within and be ready to be nimble in. And then finally, there's this whole attribution revolution. It's this idea that you're going to be buying advertising in any form, traditional or otherwise, and that you're not going to be able to prove that it's having a business impact is kind of like an endangered species, right? Anybody here selling display ads in 2010 to 2013? Anybody? Okay, a couple people dated themselves, thank you. I'm old. So in 2010, when we launched kind of the first DSPs, right? It turns out that all the big web publishers had their direct sales team selling their impressions in bulk. And by the way, it was premium. And everything that was in programmatic was remnant, right? It was the junk that we couldn't get rid of. But the problem was the jeweler advertisers came to us and they said, look, I want to reach people who physically set foot in a competing jewelry store. I want to target people who spent the last hour physically reading or searching on keywords related to people who are actively buying jewelry. It turns out it didn't matter that much if you had the right creative in front of the right person on a blog site that got 20 visitors a month and they converted. The definition of premium started to go through a whole new cycle, and it basically put a major dent in the display business. So if you sit where I sit today watching what's happening in linear TV, there's a bunch of TV broadcasting companies out there with a bunch of direct sales teams out there selling big high impression buys in bulk. They're having scale issues. They're ganging up together. They're creating ad networks, and this starts to feel like 2013 all over again. It feels like deja vu to us, and it feels like the market's coming down to the one-to-one data targeting business. And if you're a DSP like us or our other friends who are represented here, it's an exciting time because in a world where you have to be able to prove return on ad spend, visitation, conversions, it's a world we've been living in for a long time, and the currency is very different than GRPs and things like that. Okay? So we've seen this location data evolution take place in our business. When we originally started, we did a lot of DMA targeting. Then we did a lot of zip code targeting. Then we got into the mobile geofencing business and spent a lot of time competing against the mobile ad networks who had scale issues. And that really brings us down to this idea of addressable or household level marketing, which I'll better define in a minute. The direct-to-consumer brands, many of which we work with, and many of the agencies who are looking to woo them, have basically found that these organizations have proven that they can have a one-to-one conversation with a high degree of personalization on a very individualized household basis. So to that extent, my wife and I get tons of advertising for Noble. My neighbor doesn't even know who Noble is, and that's exactly how Noble wants to work. And they want to do nationwide campaigns with that kind of precision and that kind of expectation, right? So that brings us to, hopefully, the quick demo I'm going to give you here in a minute and then send you back to your breakfast, but addressable. The simplest definition I've heard is household level marketing, or this idea that two households are consuming the same content but receiving different advertising messages. Unfortunately, it's a term that came up in the cable TV space, so it became synonymous with set-top box data, and this idea that 2 minutes per hour of advertising is going to be addressable in a linear environment using an IP-based methodology. And those organizations, of course, they're charging 4 and 5 times their CPMs for that level of targeting. They've got scale issues. They're aggregating behind national sales organizations you've all been introduced to, like the Via Medias and NCCs of the world. And it feels very dated in its approach, and increasingly PII is under very skeptical, IP is under very skeptical eyes being PII. Already, tons of publishers who send us ad calls are truncating or shortening the IP for those concerns, and so, and those organizations have tons of PII data, so it's going to be a really interesting world. So, the first thing we attempted to do last year is we have tons of clients who came to us and said they actually have tons of household level data, right? They said, we've got the CRM system and we've got all of this data and we're using it for direct mail, we're using it for email, and we want to activate that data at an address level, and we want to do that digitally. And the first thing we did what most people do is we went to all the data onboarding companies, all of which you know, the IP targeting companies, the data onboarding companies, and what we found, and maybe you found something better, was that we were paying a premium to onboard this data only to get a crappy match rate and to lose all the household level granularity that was behind the data at the household level in the CRM system. And so it just didn't really work for us. And so we started working with one of our large cable providers, one of the largest in the country, to try to build a solution that we thought was more scalable and more precise. And so we built something called addressable geofencing that we launched last November. What had happened is it was originally a first-party audience tool. If you have an address list, whether it's 100 addresses or 5 million addresses, you could actually upload the addresses in our system. The system will convert every physical address to latitude and longitude on the taxable plat line and create essentially a household-level geofence at the address level, and then cache away and throw away the address data so you're left with 1 million individualized geofences. And then we use our own heuristics along with many of the cross-device companies that you guys know and respect to try to unify those devices so that we can do household-level marketing at greater scale. We didn't charge for it. We still don't charge for it. The match rate's like 99%. We've seen a lot of success in political. We've seen a lot of success in the DTC brands. We have multiple direct mail companies who are building on our API because they've got all this household level data, so they want to be able to sell you a direct mail campaign, hit a button, activate a digital distribution. And so it plays really nice for companies who have all kinds of first-party address level data. So the bigger challenge, however, well, it's more precise. I think I mentioned it to you that we think it's got infinitely more scale. It allows you to do addressable advertising at scale relatively quickly. It gives you a lot of controls that you couldn't get if you were buying a bunch of pre-built segments. And ultimately, we have our own foot traffic-based attribution solution built into it, so you can measure household-level visitation to business location, natural rate of visitation, conversion rates in real time. We're happy to traffic the Cubics and Place and Location Sciences, all the location guys of the world. Most of those people have reporting on a delay. Our ad ops people need a solution that they can optimize to foot traffic on a more regular basis, and we play nice with those companies, and we perform quite well. But anyway, it's been great. So here's the deal. I've gotten down to like 5 slides. I want to show you the curation tool. It turns out that a bunch of our clients and agencies says, we love what you're doing with the first-party address data, but we don't have the addresses. We can't, our clients won't give us the data. And so we need you to tap into organizations who do have the addresses. Well, as everybody in this room knows, the major credit bureaus, as an example, the Experian and TransUnion of the world, they have amazing household level data. Most of the data providing companies like the Axioms and Oracles of the world, they have this amazing household level data, but unfortunately they group it up into the taxonomies and force you to buy it in segments. And we basically stood up and said, we don't want to be the 200th company buying the pre-built segments. So if you want to work with us and you want to work with our clients for localized execution, you got to give us an API access that allows us to curate and comb through the data variables that exist within your system so that we can craft household level audiences without having to buy your pre-built segments, by their standard names. And so let me just show you how it works real quick. In our system, you can select a location. You can select a postal code, a city metro area, congressional districts, carrier routes, addresses. You can upload 1,000 addresses and define a radius. So you basically select an area. In this particular case, I selected 2 zip codes. The minute I selected 2 zip codes, it tells me that there's 6,983 residential plots that are located in that particular zip codes I selected. And then from that point, we go in and we start curating against the companies like the major credit bureaus, the census companies, and a lot of the major data providers with kind of a different level of access. It's 300 variables that expand to about 800 variables. You can do it on an all-you-can-eat basis, so you can select as many data variables as you want. I'm using demographic for here. You can use them for inclusion or exclusion, so female, age range, excluding this household. Once you've selected the audience variables, you apply that to that count, and what you'll see is that once we applied it to the location, it now narrowed down the household count to 1,058 households. We're giving you real-time household counts. The next evolution of this in early Q4 is going to give you device count and breakouts. It's going to say that it's 1,058 households. It's this number of mobile devices, this number of desktop laptops, this number of web-connected TVs. The third evolution of it by the end of Q4 is it's going to comb across the thousands of private marketplace deals, and it's going to show you the households you're targeting, which private marketplace deals it's over-indexing against, so you can do some inventory curation against these households as well. So you take this data, you activate this campaign, it converts these physical addresses to Platline for execution, and then from there, you can do all the things that you would expect to be able to do in a DSP, frequency cap, day parting, inventory selections. You can select the devices you want to target, in-app or in-browser. If you happen to be targeting web-connected TVs, you can target the particular web-connected devices. And we're dynamically modifying this list because there's like 500 web-connected devices that we're seeing in the ad calls. And anytime we see frequency on any device reach a certain point, we dynamically modify this device so you can define whether you want to target or not target certain web-connected devices across large screens. So in the truest sense of the word, we're building basically a solution that taps into a data ecosystem that you're all familiar with to give you the ability to curate at a household level with more control than buying the pre-built segments that we see in a lot of systems. We think that this is a great solution for obviously activating CTV campaigns, but it's been great for doing just addressable display, addressable native, addressable mobile. It's been the fastest growing product in the history of our company. Everybody's definition of quality in this business is completely different, but we're committed to having, the highest quality inventory sources in our system, using the most precise methodology we can get our hands on for audience targeting and to be compliant and work with all the many third parties and all the methodologies that you're forced to deploy and that you ask us to succumb to. So with that, thank you again for coming to the conference. That's our nationwide addressable curation tool. Gil works for us here. He's the lonely guy at the front table. I've got 55 salespeople around the country in almost every major media market. So when they call you, please take their call and treat them nicely. And I will try to train them to not waste your time. Thank you.
James, thank you so much. Thanks for kicking things off. And like I said, no lack of energy. This guy. No, thank you very much. That was great. One of the nice things about the conference is, I said, I think on the opening remarks yesterday, is we have the luxury of getting to see a little under the hood of a lot of different solutions here that are helping power the industry. So this is kind of a nice bonus to get to see what other folks are doing. James, thanks again. And so if you have questions for James or the colleague here, Gil, right? Just grab these guys at some point. You guys are in for the duration for the rest of it? Okay, cool. So they're in for the duration, so grab them if you have questions. Okay, Steve Smith, I think we're going to just kick right into this, right? Okay, so give me a welcome round of applause for Steve Smith. Bring it in, day 2. Here we go.
Hey, welcome back. I see no casts, so you survived ATVs. How was ATV? Was it as cool as promised? Was it? Yeah, it is. I hear it's really cool. Better you than me. So, welcome back to day 2. A few quick reminders. We are video streaming everything, so if you've got people back at the home office you want to have tune in, ping them to go to MediaPost.com and they can see the live stream. We'll be posting the videos later. For those of you who are, I know many of you are familiar with this model of our sort of small gatherings of peer-to-peer sharing of best practices. That's the model here. We've been doing it for 15 years, and we extend it across a lot of different topics. And there are a couple coming up that I think are directly relevant to a lot of people here that you might want to know about. Some of them are even closer to home. The first is the TV and Video Insider Summit that we've been doing for the last 5 years. This one is going to be on Montauk on October 20th through the 23rd. Again, this one, we've really had a great time at this one. The real video mavens love coming to this event to talk about data-driven video across screens. Everything from social and YouTube into OTT, CTV, advanced TV, addressable, all of the screens, and it's fascinating. In fact, some of the hottest roundtables that we have are at this event. We usually have to break them up for lunch. People really need to talk about this stuff and compare notes, and that's what we're going to be doing here. We already have brands like Topgolf, Conagra, Sleep Number, Kellogg, Electronic Arts, Freshly, Publishers Clearinghouse, and Pepsi coming, and more. So especially those of you who are brands in the house who are interested, please let us know. Also, one of the things that I like to do at that event, similar to this event, is encourage agency and client co-presentations. I'm really looking for case studies. This is a field that needs more cases, needs more hard examples for us to talk about. So if you have some ideas for co-presentations to talk about the ways in which you're actually executing campaigns across screens and what you're learning from them, that's the stuff I really want to feature at that one. So let me know. You know how to ping me online. Then, a couple of weeks later, on Kiawah Island in South Carolina, we're going to have our second direct-to-consumer Brand Insider Summit. This was such a hit in Austin earlier this year that sort of by popular demand, we're bringing back a second one on the East Coast. We already have brands like Colgate, Family Coppola, Bloomscape, Intercoastal, Dollar Shave Club involved. This one is really fun, where we bring together both a lot of legacy brands that are starting to explore direct-to-consumer channels, creating new brands for DTC, along with the emerging brands like the Quips, the Hubble Contacts, the Dollar Shave Clubs, to talk about the unique ways in which they're leveraging digital channels and getting more direct contact to consumers. It's a fascinating conversation. The ones that we had in Austin were just great. You can go back online and see some of those. They're some of the best content we've had over the years. Anyway, again, especially that one is a brand summit. It's focused on the brands themselves. So for the agencies here, if you have D2C clients that you think would make good additions to this, let me know. Those of you who are among the brands here, if you're interested in this, we're also interested in, as I said, legacy brands that are exploring this space. We want to get the conversation between the old and the new. That dynamism really works. So again, just let me know. So we have a bunch of really interesting presentations and discussions this morning, starting with something that, an industry that should humble us all. You know, we'd all love to think that we created data and we created data-driven businesses. But in fact, insurance started with actuarial tables like 400 or 500 years ago. They were building businesses around data, around predictive modeling, around understanding human behavior and how to build businesses and build products around that. And what's really interesting in our next presentation from Matt Myers, who's the head of customer acquisition at Haven Life, is the ways in which Mass Mutual, a legacy 168-year-old brand, is taking that legacy of data, that understanding of user data that comes from that relationship with customers, and melding that with some of the latest in psychographics and behavioral tracking. The ways in which old data and new data are being merged to create a direct-to-consumer product for Mass Mutual called Haven Life is what we're going to be talking about now. Matt's been in the industry about 15 years. He's driving the growth of this new brand for Mass Mutual called Haven Life. Please welcome Matt Myers.
Good morning. I'm Matt Myers. I'm the head of customer acquisition over at Haven Life. We are a Yeah, a wholly owned subsidiary of MassMutual. I don't know why this thing is not advancing. Perfect. Hold on. Did I go too far?
It's complicated. But
Oh, well, way too far. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Head of customer acquisition at Haven Life, MassMutual subsidiary. I'm from Jersey. I talk very fast, so I apologize if I kind of go through this too fast for you guys. But basically, our parent company is MassMutual. They've been around for 168 years. They're a Fortune 100 company. 5 million customers. They're doing almost $40 billion in annual revenue, right? Almost $750 billion of life insurance coverage in place, and a network of 7,000 local financial advisors, right? But there's a big kind of shift going on in the industry right now. Life insurance ownership is at its lowest level since World War II. I think it's only 57% of adult Americans have life insurance. Agents are retiring at record numbers. We're losing 3 agents for every new agent we can recruit. And there's like a seismic shift towards DTC purchasing behaviors, right? So all that kind of creates this kind of headwind for the life insurance industry, at large. So enter Haven Life, right? So MassMutual about 10 years ago decided they need to start to get into this kind of direct-to-consumer play. It just so happened that our founder, our CEO, had a couple kids and said, I'm going to go online, I'm going to try and buy life insurance. Holy crap, there's no way to do this. You kind of go through the traditional, go online, get a quote, you end up on a phone with an agent. There was no agentless solution available, right? Which is a really, really poor experience for kind of the consumer right now. So he had his couple kids. He's lucky enough that one of his members of one of his cohort at Wharton was the head of customer experience at MassMutual and said, hey, we have this issue. Everybody's retiring. You have this issue where you're trying to build this experience. Why don't we buy you guys pre-launch and incorporate you kind of into our stack and build you into our tech platform? So 2015, we launched Haven Life, and here's a little kind of overview.
life is complicated, but life insurance doesn't have to be. Welcome to Haven Life. We're changing the way you buy quality term life insurance so that it's actually simple. With us, you can get affordable coverage online from wherever, whenever you want. If approved, choose your coverage amount and term length. Just like that, peace of mind. Backed by MassMutual, a leading insurer. Easy, dependable, affordable. That's Haven Life. Get your real rate today.
So Haven Life, we sell simple to understand direct-to-consumer product. We founded in 2015. We launched in 2016. We have about 200 plus employees in their Manhattan office. We have $9 billion in coverage in force in the last 4 years. So that's pretty strong growth for us. And we're launching a couple new products this year. But nobody's ever done this before. 300 years of selling life insurance in the U.S., nobody's actually figured out a way to break out that middleman, break out that kind of agent that has to sit between the carrier and the broker. So, when we were planning to launch the product, we're like, who's going to buy life insurance direct to consumer? How, where are we going to find them? We had no idea. So we did what, our founder came from Nielsen, our CMO came from XM Radio, so we did what anyone would do. We did a big brand launch. So we started with a big media blitz, out-of-home, traditional kind of stuff. Very kind of edgy campaign, admitting you're going to die won't kill you, kind of stuff like this. It did not go over well. We got just tons of negative comments, and we're like, oh, crap, well, we got to kind of stop, rethink, reorient kind of our messaging, right? So we went from this focus on death messaging over to, this is your year, it's aspirational. We want you to feel like a hero for buying life insurance. We don't want you to think that you're confronting death, right? Because death is something nobody wants to talk about. So we made it more about, hey, protecting your loved ones, you have a family, but we still didn't know enough about our customer, right? So we did what we thought everyone would do, right? We did persona-based marketing, right? It's 2015, persona-based marketing is pretty cool. We said, hey, you know what, give me vegan moms in Vermont, give me, BMW drivers in Southern California. Whatever that was, didn't really know much about the customer. It was more of just a spray and pray kind of approach. Did all right. And then we did black box lookalikes, right? So now we're like, okay, cool. We have a couple customers coming in. We can use, stock lookalike models to try and, build off of our customer base. use the pixel to gather some information, kind of build a lookalike model. It was targeted, but it was still a little bit more targeted in persona, but it was still poorly calibrated to who actually needs to buy our product. So what we've moved to in the last year that's been just phenomenal for us is building modeled one-to-one audiences, right? So what we're doing here is we're taking our customer data, right, which is pretty interesting because lifetime value in life insurance is inverse of everywhere else, right? We don't want the highest basket size or the highest premium because those are actually the people that have the most risk, right? Life insurance is priced on the prediction that you could die during the term, right? So we're actually building lookalike models off of the people that pay the least premium every month, right? Because the understanding there is that our underwriting algorithms and our models have determined that you're going to live through your 30 years of your term, and we're never going to have to pay out your claim. So we take those kind of premium, ultra-preferred customers. We append between 200 and 400 data variables to that customer record. Anything from who you voted to in the last election, to what type of car you drive, to how often you work out, fitness data, underwriting data, all these kind of data points to basically develop a model, right? And from that model, we can then stack rank kind of our customers and we kind of peel them off and activate those audiences. So from 2015 to 2017, we were able to lower our customer acquisition costs, moving persona to lookalikes by about 50%. Then when we put this one-to-one kind in place, we loaded another 57%, right? So you're talking, we drove down our customer acquisition costs, moving from persona-based to black box lookalikes to one-to-one kind of marketing. We lowered our conversion costs 78%, right? So for us, that makes us super profitable, makes MassMutual very, very happy. The other thing, too, is we created an internal score using your underwriting data, the questions on your application, some of that demographic data that we append to your record, to develop a propensity score, how likely you are to purchase with us, right? So we can know in real time when you click submit on our website whether you're going to, with a high degree of accuracy, the percentage chance you have of buying the policy with us. And that kind of has helped us gear and steer our marketing and has led to this kind of 44% improvement in that quality, that likelihood to purchase, because we can then take the positive outcomes of our model, feed it back into our audience to improve our targeting and just drive more and more people with a propensity to purchase. Here's a little bit on how our model works. I kind of talked through a little bit of this, but we define that customer segment, the people that aren't going to die, use their underwriting data. We can correlate things like, obviously the ones like your blood pressure, but also, activity data, even things like your driver's record, right? It gives us a good understanding of your mortality. We kind of define that segment. We append these data attributes. We select the attributes with the largest deviations, right? We stack rank that prospecting list. So one of the great things about being owned by MassMutual is we have access to their data science team, which license unlimited data from Axiom and Epsilon. So we can basically, in real time, create these kind of models and run models and regressions and test out. And then we take that audience, we activate it through our DMP, and then we kind of run this champion challenger. We run a model for about a month. We take the positive outcomes we've had over that month, refine our models. Maybe we've got a new data source we want to throw in there. Maybe we want to test different attributes that popped up. And we kind of run this champion and challenger across our platforms, which I believe are my next slide, our stack, right? So Axiom, Epsilon, just talked about those. Those are our core sources of data. We use other data providers, but that's probably 90% of where we get our data from. Run those audiences through LiveRamp, and then we activate them across, Trade Desk for our kind of DSP, Amazon for OTT. If anyone wants to talk about Amazon OTT later, I'm around. It's amazing. Facebook, Simul Media, and kind of Google. And then we do a lot on the analytics side, right? So we use Segment.io to kind of push those conversions back into our model in real time. Indicative is a great behavioral analytics tool that we use. It matches our web data to our back-end server data, so we can actually see not just the sources and the traffic and where people are coming in, but ultimately at the individual user record, what's the positive outcome down to sale for each user. allows us to push that back into our, into our data and kind of refine our models. And then Attribution App, which is an MTA tool. A couple things we're really excited about coming down the line. I think location data, I know a lot of people have talked about that here. What we're really excited about is licensing location data to try and understand where our customers are, where their our customers are shopping, right? We get some of that from credit card swipe data, but understanding, the propensity of our customer to shop in Whole Foods versus Target versus Kroger, stuff like that. And then we can start to build lookalikes off of that. The other one that's really awesome, we just kind of launched a pilot with Simul Media on this one, is using IP addresses of our sales, matching them back to their to a connected TV panel, right? To figure out the exact programs that the people that ultimately purchase our product are watching, and then build a lookalike campaign off of that. So figure out what networks, what day parts, what programming people are watching, and then activate that kind of campaign, and using our real-time sales data to do that and the IP addresses off of that. So that's a couple pilots we got going in Q4 on that. A couple best practices. We have, it's all about the seed audience, right? So understanding which of our segments we want to go after. Do we want to go after a diabetes population with a diabetes campaign? Do we want to go after, this high lifetime, or low premium, high lifetime value, low risk audience? And then choosing the right variables is huge, right? Because we're spitting out 700, 800 variables. A lot of them don't have a lot of differentiation from the general population. So it's, figuring out which are the right value. We might only choose 10 to 15 of those 800 variables as, the ones that we want to build our lookalike model off of. So getting those correct variables and testing into what those correct variables are super important for us. Religiously testing new data sources. So I said Axiom and Epsilon are our big ones, but always finding additional data that we can license that could open up new insights into our population, and use that. And then the champion versus challenger mentality. So this is something we do kind of religiously as well. We run a model for a month. We then throw in a new model, and we see if that model outperforms in terms of, not just high-level metrics like click-through rate, and engagement, but lower funnel is that new model driving not just new sales, but new sales at a higher quality, right? Because for us, it's all about managing the balance of risk on our books with the need for growth, right? So we look at it kind of across two axes of just pure sales growth, and then also risk on the balance sheet, basically. That's about it. I told you I speak really, really fast.
Yeah, you do. But there's a lot packed with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
We have time for questions.
No?
Well, hang on. I always have loads. So first of all, about Amazon OTT, but
Yeah.
But what is
60% in addressable TV, in CTV or OTT, 30% in display and on video, and about 10% in social and search. Kind of the way it is, right, for us is kind of the connected TV is the upper funnel, display kind of as our middle funnel, and then search and social is kind of our lower funnel.
Yeah, so describe that customer map a bit for me. How you see your customer moving through the funnel.
Yeah,
what you're hitting them with, and how you're using technology to do it.
Yep. So it is, we activate this audience, say, with Amazon, right? We've been exposed to an ad. So we'll serve up the first ad. The first touch will be a 30-second, brand spot, right? The next spot will be, it depends, right? Because you have outcomes. One came to our site, right? Two, they didn't come to our site. Come to our site, they immediately go into, remarketing pool if they don't convert. It takes you about 8 days to get a quote from the first time you visit our site to actually start the application process with us. So we hit you up pretty hard on remarketing. Otherwise, and that's a very strong brand, come and finish your message, because we don't even finish your application or finish your purchase. Otherwise, you go into more branded, get branded remarketing. If you just saw the it's just more about Haven Life, more of that aspirational, this is your year type of creative. Try to push you down the funnel, get you to the site visit, and that programmatic direct mail off of you once you come to our site, all sorts of kind of lower funnel tactics to get you through, to come back. We don't have any agents. We don't have a call center. We don't need agents. We're wholly self-guided, 100% online.
How does this relate back? Well, actually, let me stick with the digital piece. Since you raised the topic of Amazon OTT, I'm not sure that a lot of people here are that familiar with what's available in that channel.
Yep.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what that inventory looks like and what you're able to do with it?
Yeah, so the inventory is pretty interesting, right? So it's Fire TV, so it's IMDb app is their main source, right? So if you have a Fire TV or you use the IMDb app on Roku or any other platform, you can get access to that. They have a licensing agreement to serve ads within the native app, so AMC, FX, FXX, ESPN. They get a percentage of that inventory as well. And then they have their own and operated kind of lower funnel OTT networks like Pluto and some other ones that they run through. So inventory is pretty much equal to what you can find on anything else in OTT. But the one-to-one targeting, we haven't been able to find that much elsewhere. The ability to actually say, hey, I want to target Matt Myers no matter what he's watching. We've talked to Hulu about it, stuff like that. It just hasn't quite got there for us yet.
Are you tying this back to, we're going to be talking about Amazon inventory later this morning, but is this tied back into other aspects of Amazon display inventory online?
So I assume how we use Amazon display is just off of that pixel, off that, that impression, right? So if we serve that impression, we can then serve on display inventory after that, right? So it starts with impression one is always the video through the Fire platform, right? And then the second impression is across any Amazon inventory source.
Sure. Julie Pasha from Double Verify. So question, since you're targeting such niche audiences, and connected TV devices are often shared within a family, how are you
So we find that 40% of our customers are spouses. Right, so it's okay, I think, right? In our world, right, it's usually the male that buys, and about 3 to 6 months later, the wife buys, right? That's just how it's worked out for us. So it's okay, I think, for us. We've also found, through a lot of research, that the woman, the wife in the household, is usually the spur to get the husband to get the product, right? So we're okay with kind of sharing that impression within a household because we feel there's benefit to hitting up both people in one household. And they tend to. One more point on that. Spouses tend to have similar mortality risk because they have similar lifestyles, right? So if you're a healthy husband, you typically have a healthy wife. If you're unhealthy, you have so on and so forth, right? So there's really no downside risk for us to hit both spouses in the household.
Sure.
Yeah. You brought up. Hi, my name is Vince Pham, Cause IQ. You brought up IP matching. So from my knowledge, usually most purchases are done at the workplace. So how are you guys working around that when you're tracking them to the household?
Yeah, so that's a good point. The targeting, it starts off your household, but a lot of the providers that we work with have kind of cross-device, so they can tie my household devices, right, to my work devices, right? So, right, exactly, right? So either my phone, because my phone's used in the workplace or the home, or my work computer, I connect to my work IP and my home IP, and once I'm kind of routed in that home IP, it kind of circulates out to all my other devices, and I can find you pretty easily.
So I have to ask this because you started out with that failed creative that really harkened back to the opening episode of Mad Men.
Yeah.
When the German researcher is trying to pitch Don Draper that they should be selling Death Wish as their way to save their cigarette account. Didn't anybody get fired for that? Didn't anybody see that one coming?
No, not at all. I mean, I think.
Did no one watch Mad Men? Do they learn nothing from TV?
The idea behind it. So what's really interesting too is back then we gave everybody a book on their first day that said, "This is how you're going to die," which was an extension of that campaign, and it was all sorts of like writings on death. But No, I think
You're
that the idea
doubling
was,
down on death as a.
it's very morbid. Our conference rooms are named after weird ways you can die. Like, it's really weird. But I think we had to try to find a way to break through, right? So if you look at, like, the sea of life insurance imagery, it's lifestyle, stock photography, a husband, a wife, and a kid, right? So our thought was initially, how do you break free? How do you break through, right? So it's like, why don't we just go crazy with this kind of abrasive? You're going to die. Address that, right? Because that's the only thing that's going to happen, you know, guaranteed to you. So we tried that. It just did not have any public sentiment, positive public sentiment at all. So like, hey, you know what? We're a small brand still. Nobody really knows about us outside this campaign. We can pivot. So we kind of pivoted to this aspirational, like, you know, be a hero, be a superhero.
But spare the flowers and the stock
Yeah.
shots. Okay. Matt Myers, thank you so much. That was cool.
Thanks, guys.
So launching a new product is daunting under the best of circumstances, but when you're doing it after you've merged two major brands who had two different ways of going about doing basic digital advertising, it's even harder. And that's exactly what Saqib Pasha helped pull off at Norton LifeLock. He's the director of digital media customer acquisition at Norton LifeLock. He's going to be talking to us about the ways in which they launched a new product after having merged a couple of two brands that actually had two different infrastructures, two different ways and philosophies of coming at digital advertising. It was a really interesting hat trick. Saqib Pasha, please tell us about it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Saqib. Thanks for the intro, Steve. So I oversee digital media customer acquisition at Symantec. So the fun thing is, let me get into the agenda first. So I'll do a quick introduction about myself, about the company, and about the products. I'll go into after that. I just want to make sure that I know there's a variety of audiences in the types of audiences in the room, so I want to make sure that I don't get too detailed about our specific product launch. I want to make sure that it's applicable to everybody else in the room. So I'll talk about overall themes of what we learned. It's been about 30 months or so since the Symantec acquisition of LifeLock happened. So I've decided to sort of break up the timeframes into two halves. So I'll talk about the first half, what we learned, second half, what we learned, try to summarize it all up in the last slide. And if there's time at the end for questions, I'm happy to answer that. And I'll be around so I can answer questions off stage as well. Great, introductions. So once again, Saqib Pasha, responsible for acquiring customers in the digital world in this Symantec environment. So interesting thing about the businesses, so as I was in the process of putting this presentation together, Symantec, as some of you guys might know, is this global antivirus brand. So we have two large parts of the business. One half of the business, about $2.5 billion of revenue, is the consumer side, which includes all the Norton and all the LifeLock brands. And the second side is this enterprise side, which is Symantec. So as I was sort of thinking about, I spoke to Steve and I was like, okay, I'm going to present this journey that we went through, all the stuff that we learned, and hopefully the industry that we're in, a lot of changes, a lot of mergers, a lot of acquisitions, a lot of, end of terms of companies as well. So hopefully it'll be applicable. So we had this conversation 3 weeks ago, and I think like 2 weeks ago, Symantec sold the enterprise side, half the business, which is the Symantec side, to Broadcom for $10 billion. So I think what's really interesting is I'm talking about all these things. They're like, hey, we learned all this stuff. Hopefully it's helpful. And I think I'm actually going to have to practice what I preach, because we're going to start this journey all over again, because we are now, Norton LifeLock's going to end up at the end of this year being its own publicly traded company minus the Symantec brand. So we're going to start this whole dog and pony show again. So then let me talk about the products as well. So LifeLock, I came from the LifeLock side of the acquisition, which closed in early 2017. So we're identity theft protection company. There's about 6 million or so customers that we have today. Symantec, which is the consumer side, so Norton has about 20 million global customers. We have offices everywhere. We have customers everywhere across the globe. So then when the Norton Symantec acquisition of LifeLock happened, what was promised to the street for this multi-billion-dollar acquisition was like, hey, look, identity theft protection is this growing segment. We hear about breaches all the time. There was Capital One that happened a week, 2 weeks ago, while I was on vacation, so that was fun, having to work on vacation. So it was a growing segment. The Norton side of the fence, which is the big cash cow, stable business that's multiple decades old now, 20 million customers, shrinking. So what was promised to the street was like, hey, we have this identity theft protection service, we have this device protection service. If we can bundle and have one product that sells cyber security, whatever that means, you know, we can reverse the churn in our overall customer numbers and increase our LTV. So that is the journey that I'll kind of walk you guys through. So we had to start off with, we had two funnels. So there's a Norton funnel where we're selling Norton products, and we had a LifeLock funnel that we're selling LifeLock products. The end goal is to sell a single cybersecurity product that does both antivirus protection as well as identity theft insurance on both funnels. So that's where we are today. Great, so let me just try to make sure that this is applicable to everybody in the audience. So I was thinking about how to sort of make this relevant for more than myself in this room. So I was thinking back about like all the types of launches I've been a part of in the past. So I did this big company, small launch thing when I was at eBay. I was at eBay for 5 years. We launched this within the eBay umbrella, this ecologically sustainable worldofgood.com website. And much easier to do than what we embarked on over the last like 30 months. It was a small launch in a big company, not a lot of money involved. It was much early in my work career as well, so I had a much smaller seat at the table as well. Didn't have to make a lot of gut calls, pretty easy. Small company, big launch. So I was at a startup where a new product launch, super complicated, startup, 100 people, CEO made all the decisions, much easier. The journey we've been on over the last 30 months, and I think we're about to embark on post-December again, is this big company, big launch problem set that we have to solve for, where there's multiple funnels, multiple brands, new product, new cybersecurity category, whatever that means, as I keep saying. Lots of people, lots of cross-functional work that needs to get done, lots of stakeholders. So yeah, I mean, so it's been a fun journey. And then the other interesting thing that I wanted to talk about is, so I divided this time frame into two separate segments. So there's the first half, and then there's the second half. So success for us, the first, and honestly, if you guys asked us internally, like, hey, 30 months ago, is this how you guys would have planned this journey? I think the external answer would be yes, but like internally, like this is not what the game plan was. I think we kind of figured our way out. We did have certain promises out to Wall Street that we made about integrating the two products together and the two companies together that we did need to keep. But this is very like hindsight being 2020, like, you know, revisionist history. Like I'm trying to position things in a good and in a bad way. So, all right, so success after the first 15 months. So as I kept saying, we have this Norton funnel and we have this LifeLock funnel. So for us, success after the first 15 months was selling LifeLock in the Norton funnel, and that's it. Success in the second half, where we are today, is selling this new product, which does cybersecurity on both funnels, on Norton funnel and LifeLock funnel. And since then, we've realized that the iOS and the Google Play funnel are two additional funnels. So we have two more funnels that we have to think about. Great, first half insights. So I was thinking about, so I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts. I waste a lot of time listening to a lot of sports podcasts. And I was thinking about like, hey, like, you know, at the end of the day, they're covering the same content over and over again. It's LeBron James, Dallas Cowboys, Steph Curry, whatever it is. But I keep going back to listen to the same stuff over and over again. I was like wondering like why that is. And I think the obvious answer is like, I like the content. And I also think it's because I think these guys take a really strong position on like, hey, yep, you know, this guy is good, this team sucks, whatever it is. And then the other thing, so I think that's interesting. And the other thing that I also like is when these guys go back and they'll say like, yep, this is where we were right, this is where we were wrong. So I don't know if there's any Colin Cowherd fans in the audience. He's with Fox Sports. So he has this segment called Where I Was Right and Where I Was Wrong. So I tried to set that up in that same format, this presentation. So I have a series of slides on like, okay, yeah, this is where we were right and this is where we were wrong. I didn't quite call it, you know, this is where we were right, this is where we were wrong, because don't have a multi-year contract with Symantec like these guys do with ESPN and Fox Sports, and I like my job. So I positioned it as like wins and opportunities. It's also getting live streamed, so I want to make sure I stay on the right side of our PR team. Great. All right, win. First half. So the deal closed, the Symantec acquisition of LifeLock closed February of 2017. The thing about a product launch at the end of the day is there's lots of people working with lots of other people. We were two organizations that didn't really know each other, that functioned at a variety of paces, that came together, and we had launched this cybersecurity product at this time frame as the end goal. So I think one thing that we did really well was within the first quarter of the deal closing, I think we'd figured out who the C-suite was going to be. I think within the first 6 months, we figured out like a couple layers underneath that. So it was really good in getting the people, at least at the highest levels, organized. And I was very impressed by the pace at which we'd been able to do that. So that was definitely a win. It was super critical to getting things done because at least we knew, like, okay, this guy's the head of the enterprise side, this guy's the head of the consumer side, and these are the product leads, and these are the engineering leads, and so on and so forth. Great. What we didn't do as well as we'd hoped for. So now that I'm going through this new Broadcom acquisition of Symantec, the enterprise side, so I'm on the consumer side, it's a very, very different experience. So Broadcom's come out and said, like, hey, look, on the enterprise side, you guys have $2.4 billion of expenses every year. We need to cut that down to $600 million the first year of the acquisition. So they've announced, like, hey, look, we're going to reduce headcount by a very large number. Symantec, when they bought LifeLock, didn't make that announcement. So what ended up happening was we just doubled the size of every team. So marketing became twice as big. Engineering became twice as big. And then over time, when it came to launching a product, it became challenging because even though the C-suite and maybe a couple layers underneath that were fairly well organized, I think when the actual work had to get done, there's just a lot of confusion as to who owns what. And it took us, I'd say, like a good 6 to 12 months to sort of figure that thing out. So hopefully, moving forward, we can do that better the second time around. Great, win. Well, we did right. Selection of a brand journey to aspire to. So as soon as Norton bought LifeLock, we're like, okay, what is this end company going to be called? Like, what are we selling on and on what funnel? Because all the Norton folks were like, we love the Norton brand. All the LifeLock folks were like, we love the LifeLock brand. Nobody really wanted to kill that brand equity and kill that brand. So originally the position that we took was, hey, look at FedEx Kinko's, right? Like, okay, FedEx Kinko's was FedEx Kinko's for the first couple of years, and over time, this Kinko's, brand went away. So we're like, okay, great, so which one's gonna go away? Oh, it's LifeLock. Well, the LifeLock people are unhappy, but at least we picked a path. We could talk to our external partners, we could communicate externally, like that's what we're trying to do. Turns out we were a little bit too hasty in making that decision. We were trying to be fast because I think we were trying to be organized and execute as fast as possible. However, turns out that there's a lot of brand equity tied to LifeLock. There's a lot of brand equity tied to Norton. it didn't make sense for us to leave revenue on the table. And we'd spent hundreds of millions of dollars over a decade marketing LifeLock, so we just didn't want to kill that brand. So it's like, well, it's not FedEx Kinko's anymore. It's this AT&T Uverse journey that we're going to pick, because there's AT&T, there's DirecTV, there's Uverse. So that, and all three brands exist, all three funnels exist. The funny thing is, like, while we were selecting this, like, I was going through the process of selecting cable and internet, and it was such a pain trying to figure out the difference between Uverse, DirecTV, AT&T. So maybe we change that journey again, but for the time being, that's the one that we're sticking to. So we learned that. Win, customer messaging and positioning research. So the LifeLock side, we were very, very heavily invested in, like, offline channels. So a lot of TV, a lot of radio, stuff that's expensive to produce, expensive to buy. You don't frequently change the ad units all the time. So what we had was, we had a very robust customer research team that went out there and would figure out pretty quickly and pretty effectively, like paneling, canvassing, like speaking to actual humans about, like, hey, what are the reasons to buy these products? So when the two companies came together, we had that function. We were like, okay, what does cybersecurity mean? What are certain features that resonate with people? Like, what gives people the reason to buy? So we were able to really leverage that muscle. We figured, like, hey, look, people care about identity theft, device protection, they care about their Wi-Fi privacy, VPN, so on and so forth. So we were able to really leverage that muscle, and our marketing copy was fairly early on, was actually pretty good, you know, compared to what I had seen in the past from my prior experiences. Great, so customer research sat under marketing, so we could execute really quickly. What we didn't do as well, so our landing page and our customer experience within the funnel, so for at eBay and at Netflix and at Symantec as well, so my prior experiences have historically sat with product, and turns out in a new company with lots of people coming together, that relationship takes a little bit of time to build. So we were landing people on pages that it's like LifeLock ads. I'm sure there was like 5% of instances, even in my channels, where you're clicking on a LifeLock ad and sometimes like landing on like a Norton.com funnel, and vice versa. That's also easier to fix because we can tweak where the landing pages are. I think the stuff that was really painful for me was because Norton had this 20 million large existing customer base, the CRM channel was the largest driver of revenue. So marketing would land users on a landing page, and the user would be willing to give you a credit card number to sign up for our product, and we'd say, wait, fill up this whole like account with all your details, and then we'll take your credit card, right? So this is the type of stuff, like, I think it's taken a long time for us to fix, which is like, hey, they're ready to pay you, take the money, and then get the lead for getting them to renew next year, and so on and so forth. So that was a fun journey. I think we've solved for that mostly. We're much better on the app side than we still are on our e-store, but definitely something that we learned. Win, reporting setup. Norton had fairly robust reporting. LifeLock had fairly robust reporting. Two companies came together. We had our LifeLock goals. We had our Norton goals, all fun and dandy. So that was working well. Problem, KPIs. So we were selling, so the goals were misaligned. So on the Norton side, we cared about revenue, and on the LifeLock side, we cared about units. So for me and my team, it became very challenging around like, okay, are we optimizing revenue by selling more units, selling fewer units at higher ASP? Like, what is it that we're trying to ultimately optimize for? Other problems, we had like a variety of attribution models early on. So we were measuring Norton in a different way than we were measuring LifeLock. Ultimately, I had a number that I needed to hit. Multiple attribution methodologies made life really complicated. We've mostly solved for that by now. Win, agency consolidation. So what happened, one of the good things that happened during this big multi-billion dollar buy was early on we got McKinsey consultants within our midst. So generally speaking, I think a lot of people have like unhappy reactions when we have another stakeholder come in and tell us what we need to do. But for this instance, I think it was actually a super helpful experience because we went through a period where since we were just double of everything, we had double the number of creative agencies that we need, double the number of media agencies that we needed, and McKinsey was, and because the agency decision was so diffused in who makes the final call, it was actually helpful to have a third party like a McKinsey who we were paying a lot of money for, so hence rolled up into the CEO, to referee that process. So we were able to actually get the agency number down to, both on the creative side and on the media side, down to an efficient number within the 6-month period where we started conversations and the contracts got signed. So that was pretty good. What we missed out on, so ad tech consolidation. So we had multiple attribution vendors. We had Google Analytics on one side. We had Adobe site analytics on the other side. We had multiple DMPs. We had multiple DSPs. And it's just because they were cheaper individually than our agency relationships, it just got kind of put to the side, and we probably solved this a quarter or two later than it really needed to be. But at the end of the day, what happened was like, and this is good for the next go for us because we're going to start this again, is procurement got involved. And then so we had to get involved as well because we were like, okay, we're paying all this money for multiple DMPs. What do we really need? And then that's what kickstarted our process into like, you know, shrinking down to a more sustainable, longer-term number on the ad tech side. Bundle experimentation, yeah. So like I said, we were trying to figure out what product to sell on what funnel. We had made promises to the street. We had to hit these numbers. There was like no way out. We were historically fairly risk-averse as a company when it comes to testing big things, but I mean, you know, we didn't have that the time this time around, so it forced us to experiment really quickly, which was great. Opportunity. While we were going through this long, complicated exercise of launching the cybersecurity category, what had happened is Symantec had, prior to the LifeLock acquisition, made promises externally to get into the home router security market. So think about your Google Wi-Fi's of the world, think about your Eeros of the world. So before they bought LifeLock, they said like, yep, we're going to launch this product in this time frame. So then they bought LifeLock. Then we had a larger problem to solve for. So what ended up happening is we did not end up spending any time, or not enough time, on the smaller category that we wanted to launch. So as a result, we didn't do the best job possible, and product doesn't exist anymore. So we've sunset that product. So that was a little bit of a miss on our side. But like I said, I mean, we made certain promises to the street prior to the acquisition. So, you know, hopefully we don't do that for the next go. Win. So this is the last one in this first half. I'm going to try and speed up to the second half. So regionalization and focus. So one thing that we did realize is that all our Asia Pac offices, our EMEA offices, had their own engineering departments, had their own product departments, and could make their own decisions. So what we did is to hasten up the execution. We just basically democratized the process of like, hey, if you're the Asia Pac lead or if you're the EMEA lead, you're not held to North American decisions about when we're launching what. So that was like definitely a win for us because we went from the centers of excellence model where all decisions were being made in the U.S. to empowering our regional offices to do the right thing and to do it quickly. So that was definitely a win. Moving on to the second half, a few slides here. Win. So this second half, once again, the success point is where we are today, which is we're able to sell the cybersecurity product on both the Norton and the LifeLock funnel, as well as the multiple app store funnels. So how do we do this? Marketing channel selection for the launch test. So what we did pretty well is we realized that we didn't want to test selling this new product on expensive channels where the creatives took a long time to build. So offline was basically, so what my boss, the CMO, was able to do was he was able to buy time with the leadership to say like, hey, look, we're not going to test on TV. We're not going to test on radio. We're not going to, if it doesn't work, we don't want it to be super expensive on the on the media side and the actually building of the ad unit side. So we picked all the digital channels which were on my plate. So that was fun. Okay, great. So then we had tests going on the affiliate side, on the search side, on the display side, on the email side. So all the digital channels. So then, obviously, we got conflicting results from various channels. So on the affiliate side, as an example, Norton affiliates could not wait to sell LifeLock because the payouts on the LifeLock side, because the LTV was higher, was going to be much better. And then the Norton affiliates were like, no, so then the LifeLock affiliates were like, nope, we don't really need to pitch Norton. Similarly, on the email side, we had like conflicting insights. Sometimes LifeLock worked better with Norton. Sometimes Norton worked better with LifeLock. Sometimes the red ads worked better than the yellow ads. It was kind of all over the place. So then it was interesting yesterday when our friends from T-Mobile were talking, and they basically said like, and I fully agree, which is like, hey, look, like sometimes the results are going to say something that you don't necessarily agree with because it's just a crappy customer journey, and you're just going to have to make a gut call. So that's what we ended up doing, but it was a very, very painstaking process because, conflicting insights. Price testing. So one of the things that we learned about launching a new category was using price as a lever. So we did this pretty well, I'd say. We were able to get a lot of testing out on a lot of different digital channels. We learned a lot, but on the flip side, what ended up happening is, as I'd mentioned at the start of the conversation, we were optimizing to revenue, units. We had this ASP number, which was revenue divided by units. We wanted to keep an eye out on churn rates. They're kind of like, sometimes they're not all, they don't all move in the same direction. So the types of price settings, so we ended up testing a lot of discounts on our monthly product, which really generated good units, but it cost us revenue because instead of buying our annual product, people were buying our monthly products. So once again, we just have to make some gut decisions on what's right and what's wrong, but conflicting data, a lot of price testing, but sometimes we got that was good, but sometimes we got results that were mixed, so a lot of decisions that needed to get made that made me very, very nervous. Discovering a lightly tapped acquisition funnel. So as I was saying at the start of the conversation, when we started the journey, we were only talking about two funnels. We were talking about the LifeLock.com and the Norton.com funnel. We were spending probably less than 2% of our budget on app marketing 30 months ago. I think we're probably spending like 10 to 15% of our budget now. We discovered that, we've been very blessed because this VPN category has really taken off. I'm sure you guys see ads for like Nord and Express on TV all the time now. So we've really been able to get a good start in that market right now because we do have VPN products in our ecosystem, and the game plan there is to upsell into our more expensive products down the road. Have no idea what those upsell rates are going to look like because we've been pushing this product over the last year, but moving from about 2 to 3% of our marketing budget to about 15% of our marketing budget, and we're super DR, we're very, very DR focused, is definitely a win in my eyes. Opportunity, defining a customer. So when we were communicating to Wall Street, we had good revenue numbers, we had good churn numbers, and then we started to spend 15% of our marketing budget on app. Much lower ASP, much lower churn, much higher churn. So the question now that we have internally that we're struggling with is, do we count customers that come in through the app, the people that convert through the app as a customer because it's beneficial for overall subscriber numbers, but it's really bad for churn numbers and it's bad for ASP numbers. So I think the decision that we're taking is we're going to keep defining customers as like folks that are buying our standard LifeLock and our Norton products. We're going to keep VPN separate, but that's been an exciting journey. Appetite for risk and rapid testing. Like I said, we were historically on the slower side of making bigger decisions. We just don't have that comfort anymore, so that's definitely been a fun win for us. Summary. Okay, great. So, trying to wrap this all up. First step, as I look back, it would have been much easier had we defined what a single success metric looked like when we started this journey. I'm going to really try and pound this message as we come in on the second acquisition right now that we're about to embark on. Obviously, lots of different stakeholders in the room, really hard to get buy-in on what the success metric looks like, but as a media person, it's always easier for me to be able to communicate with my team if I can say like, okay, yep, we're spending all this money and we're driving units, or we're driving revenue, or whatever that number is. So that's definitely, I think, step one. Organization, team, agency comes immediately after. Like I said, product launches, lots of people, lots of teams. It's all wonderful when the organization is clearly defined. Process. Getting the right process in place is integral is important for the overall smooth execution. Mistakes. So in the digital channel, we did a lot of rapid testing. We made a lot of mistakes. The good thing is, well, I'm still here, so we were able to sandbox the mistakes into smaller environments. And I tried to stay ahead of like a mistake. So if something wrong had happened, communicate it up front. Didn't let it be a surprise. Took care of it as quickly as possible. But that's definitely been a part of the journey. It's going to be a part of the journey coming up. But try to like kind of gate it so it's not a huge channel and a lot of media spend. Risk appetite, as you guys can tell, made a lot of decisions that were gut. Made me really nervous. Still here, so I think we made the right call in most of the situation. Simplify the journey. So there's landing pages, products, pricing, promo codes, funnels. I just go and I click on our ads and I kind of go through the journey. I just make sure everything's lined up, even across all of my channels. It's been wonderful having a couple of interns this summer because when I get tired, I have an additional source of hands and eyes to go do this for me. But honestly, just simplifying the journey has been huge. I click on all our email links, all our search links, all our display links, all our affiliate links, or as many of them as I can find just to make sure things are all lined up. And then lastly, it's honestly like just been such a fun last 30 months of testing and learning and working with a variety of different people. And honestly, like it's a first world problem. Like we're starting this journey again in a few months' time, and I'm really, really excited because I think I've learned a lot more over the last like year and a half than I had over maybe the few years prior to that. So I'm really excited. So if any of you guys are going through this same journey, I think just buckle up, enjoy, and it's just really nice in hindsight to look back and think about everything that we've learned. So with that, I think I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Saqib, thank you. We have time for questions, Saqib.
Are we on? It was great meeting you last night. I just had a quick question. You were talking about how you were shrinking down your ad tech stack and some of the relationships. Are you allowed to talk about some of the criteria that you use to drive some of those business decisions?
Yeah, so I think step one was trying to figure out if we were even using the tech. So we had a DMP relationship which only one part of the marketing world was using. So we looked to see like, hey, look, why is that the case? Can we spread this cost across all of marketing or several more channels? So I think that was obviously like step one is, okay, are we using what we're already paying for? Step two, we looked at the level of support that we were also getting. So like when we reached out, like once again, like let's just use this DMP example. And we had a conversation as to why that was the case. It's like, hey guys, and similarly we had this, I'm trying to think about other examples. We had this DMP relationship. We had this landing page optimization vendor where we were like, hey guys, like why are you just applied in this, like in just search or just affiliates or just direct mail? And we just didn't get a good answer. It looked like, they were just passing the buck. We had conversations internally about like, hey, look, do we like the team? What's the process here? So I think just trying to figure out, like, are we getting what we're paying for? Do we like the people that we're working with? And then the other conversation, which was the more of a gut call thing that we had to make, was like, okay, like, well, if we get rid of these companies, we don't have this tech, how sure are we that we're not going to use this in the next 12 months? Because going through the whole process with legal, compliance, getting the contracts done, that's just another 6 months. So if we didn't need it in the next 12 to 18 months, we just got rid of it. So that was the high level criteria that I recall. I'm sure we had a checklist of other things that we did, but those rise to the top of mind. So, you know.
Would you talk a little bit more about the media mix? You said that it had evolved over time.
Yeah.
I want to focus a little bit, follow up on mobile, but just overall, what was the general media mix for all of this?
Absolutely.
Where were you hitting them with what formats?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think there's a couple people here on the media side that we've worked with in the past, so they can attest to this as well. So LifeLock was, we were spending north of $200 million annually on the LifeLock side, and that was, and then on Norton we had like another large amount. LifeLock was, I would say, like 75% offline. We were very heavy. We're still very heavy on short form TV. We're one of the largest buyers of infomercials in the U.S. on the LifeLock side. I think one quarter we were actually the largest. Big buyers of radio. So this is like I'm talking about. And then on the Norton side, it was all search and all affiliates, and not. So one side was all offline or very offline. One side was only online, and we had, like I said, close to nothing on the mobile funnels. So I think today we're probably 50% offline, maybe 35% on digital channels, and maybe 15% on mobile. If I'm trying to remember, like I did this yesterday.
Is it mainly display? How are you doing video storytelling? Is it mainly
Yeah,
display? Are you doing retargeting? What's the customer journey?
Yeah, so we have a robust search team. We have we have a successful business on the search side. We have a successful business on the affiliate side. We spend a lot of money on display. We do a lot of email prospecting. We're just getting into CTV, into the CTV space. So I'm going to go find out more about this Amazon OTT business because we got the pitch. And anyways, so we're just getting into that. We do a lot of ads on radio on the offline side, like I said, on a lot of short form TV and a lot of infomercials. Direct mail is probably like 5% of our overall marketing mix as well. So maybe, I correct my 50, 35, 15 split because direct mail is a separate channel for us. We don't really call it offline. So yeah, I think those are the larger channels. We're excited about getting into this CTV space though. So that's the big one that we've taken on this quarter.
You mentioned that you increased mobile considerably.
Yes.
Mobile conversion has always been, a real choke point for everybody. So tell me what you learned about what sort of messaging and placement where was driving conversions. What did you learn about that channel?
Yeah, so let's see. So most of the success that we've had on the mobile side has been on our VPN app. We've been a huge beneficiary of a lot of the work that Norton Express has done in this VPN space by spending the large sums of money on their own offline advertising. So we've been able to draft off of that. So the biggest success on the mobile side. So I think, number one, I don't think there was just a ton of focus on the mobile funnels historically. So we started to care about it. I think we had a person I have a colleague who's responsible on the app marketing side. He was able to build a really good narrative and to get buy-in at the highest levels to talk about mobile and to be able to use mobile as a way to upsell into our more expensive categories. So he was just a wonderful storyteller internally. So he was able to get buy-in, which then increased focus, which then increased investment. And then when we were spending enough, we were able to go to products. So some silly things that we used to do, similar to when people wanted to pay us and we were like, hold on, give me all your details and then I'll take your money. We were able to build a funnel where we said like, hey, look, okay, we'll take your money, then give us your details. So like we made optimizations like that. I think I think until recently, and I might be wrong here, like we didn't even have user acquisition in the mobile funnel. I think it was only meant for existing customers to use it as an add-on. So just even using it, like putting like a sign-in button in the mobile funnel, that was huge. On the LifeLock app, that's definitely the case. Like we weren't ever thinking about using the app as a customer acquisition channel for selling identity theft insurance. And then we built a sign-in button in there, and we optimized the funnel. And then we were able to tell a good story internally, get investment, and then over time we've been able to tweak it. Like the creative's just a lot better now, and just iterative stuff outside of the big things that I mentioned.
Saqib Pasha, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We want to welcome another one of our sponsors, Gravity Analytics, for a 10-minute message about where we go is who we are, using location intelligence to enhance the customer journey. Please welcome Matt Jacobson, who's CFO of Gravity Analytics.
Thanks, Tess. So thanks, MediaPost, for having us. You're probably all wondering why the hell did they send the CFO to speak at a marketing conference? But I'm here to tell you, like, the thing that's most important to me and what I'm responsible for at Gravy is the overall health of our business. And part of what the overall health of our business is making sure that all our stakeholders are happy. And when our stakeholders are happy, it means that our location intelligence data is helping them acquire more customers, engage better with their customers, find more customers, and learn more about their customers. So the question really is what do my customers really want? And what I'm hoping to tell you a bit about is how can location data help you really understand what your customers want? First, let's step back, right? For a long time, marketers have used demographic data and online data to provide some visibility into consumer data. But let me tell you, one 47-year-old male doesn't look like the next one. If you look at my Facebook feed, you would think I'm in the market for a cruise. I hate cruises. I was looking to buy some new hockey equipment. Well, that's my 17-year-old son, not me. And I was in the market to buy fitness equipment. Well, it's partially correct. About a month ago, I bought a new elliptical machine for my basement, but I bought it. I don't need it anymore. So I'm not sure why they continue to spend money trying to get me to buy more fitness equipment. So if you know what's important to me, right, it would probably look something like, I work out, I'm interested in health. I travel a lot for my kids' sporting events, so I'm a weekend traveler. And I love the Washington Capitals. So how would you find all this data about me? So you can tell a lot about people by the places they go and the events they attend. And that tells us a lot about what their real-world interests are. The stores they visit, the restaurants they frequent, and the concerts they attend. And this gives you a higher-level understanding of what's important to these consumers. So, people who go to the gym a lot, participate in weekend sporting events, look like athletes. People who go to malls and high-end stores look like frequent shoppers. And people who stay at four-season hotels and take lots of cruises tend to look like luxury travelers. When you layer on another level of intelligence about the places people go, you start to understand who your hockey fans are, who are your outdoor activity enthusiasts, who are your pet lovers, who are your foodies. So think of it like an offline footprint. The level of commitment that you get from basically going somewhere and spending money somewhere tells a lot more about that person's commitment than just how they browse. So our real-world activity can inform the end-to-end customer experience, right? Our data can help you acquire more customers, help you better understand your existing customers to promote and cross-sell to them, help you understand whether or not your customers are actually where you're sponsoring events and creating events, and helping you understand how do you create loyalty programs that are aligned with your customers' interests. So let me tell you a bit about Tara's Kitchen. Tara's Kitchen is a healthy meal delivery service. And Tara's Kitchen had a little bit of a problem. They knew who their best customers were because they knew who continued to buy from them, but they knew nothing else about those customers. So they came to Gravy Analytics, and what we did was we took their list of their best customers, and the first thing we did was matched their customers to our mobile ad IDs. And then we looked to understand, what do we know about these people? Is there some sort of insight that we can give back to Tara's Kitchen to tell them who these people are? And we found 3 things about them. We found that they'd recently gone through some sort of family change. We found that they were interested in health and fitness and lifestyle type events, and they tended to be luxury spenders. They shopped at higher end stores. And then we looked into our database of other mobile ad IDs that had these characteristics, and were able to build an audience segment that Tara's Kitchen could target to increase their customer base. And we got a nice little call out from their head of marketing about the value of our data and how we were able to identify a larger audience for them to sell more high-end healthy meal delivery services. So we process, I think, 18 billion signals a day. They're all anonymous. They're all opted in on our platform. And we take those location signals and we compare it against objects and geofences to understand what does these location signals mean about how these people live their daily lives. The things that differentiate us is we see over 250 million permissioned unique devices in the US on a monthly basis. We are the only company that's out there that has event data, knowing that not just that you're at Madison Square Gardens in New York, but are you there for the circus, or are you there for a Knicks game or a Rangers game? And everything we do is deterministic. It's all based on observing a signal within a geofence. We don't do any probabilistic modeling or anything of that sort. So I'm here for the remainder of the day. My colleague, Molly Alvarez, will be here through the duration. If you have any questions, please come see us. Great, thank you.
Matt, thank you. That was great. So as Matt said, these guys are here for the rest of the day. We're going to actually move into a coffee and networking break that Gravy Analytics is also sponsoring. So if you have some questions, you can get with Matt and his colleague there. So with that, let's take about 15, 20 minutes, get some coffee, and continue the conversation. Thanks again. Big round of applause for Matt. Thanks, Matt.